Hi, welcome to my build of a 60-inch wingspan Avanti Pattern Plane. In this video I'm going to be starting to shape the fuselage itself now I've finished the basic construction. At the moment it looks a little bit like a flying brick. It's very chunky at the front, huge amount of balsa, but I think about 50% of this is going to come off with my plane and sanding it. And you can get an idea by looking at the nose ring here of what it's got to come down to. It's going to be sanded and planed down to that finish, and it's going to produce that lovely sleek Avanti shape. Before I start working on this lovely sleek fuselage, getting that lovely bullet shape, I want to try and get as much information as I can from these plans to help me. I don't want to be doing it just by guesswork. And so the first thing I've done is I've made a former, a template that will help me do the shaping. This is looking at the plan view, and here I've marked on the first the ring at the front, the 6mm plywood ring, so I know where that starts. I've cut it a little bit bigger, but that's of no consequence. So this I can mark onto the top, onto the plan view of the fuselage, and that will give me that shape. The next piece of information I'm getting from the side view of the side elevation of the fuselage, and again I've marked on here where that 6mm ring is, the plywood ring, and you can see here I've marked that. What I haven't done with this is I omitted the piece that cut down here, but that's not a problem. It's mainly to get this shape here and to make sure that the overall thing is correct. Now the next thing that I'm working on is doing a couple of profiles for the information we have on these two views here. It basically shows us what we're seeing at F2 and at F3. So I've used a piece of tracing paper and I've just drawn over that so I can make myself a profile, and again I've done that with F2. I've drawn over that, and again another profile. Well, I've now got all of my templates cut out and prepared to help me in shaping the fuselage. I've got my David plane at the ready, which will remove most of the material probably, and then I've got sanding sticks, which I'm probably going to replace the paper on some of these, the sanding paper, so it's nice and fresh. But these again are invaluable for getting consistent curves. So I've used my profiles to, before I start removing the balsa, I've used my profiles to draw on the shape of what needs to come off and what it's going to look like finally. And a good example here is on the nose. Line that up with the former at the front and just drawn on that line, so I know I need to bring that in. I've also done that on the sides with this former, and you can see I've got hopefully you can see there's a line here that comes down and then sweeps up to the nose, and that more or less lines up with the nose ring, and around the nose ring you can see all this needs to come off. And I put an arch on here. This is quite interesting because on the previous video I was saying that I still need to put triangular stock here at the back of the engine bay, but it was built like a tank and I couldn't really see it was necessary. Once I put this line on here for what it needs to be curved over to, I realised that actually the triangular stock is there because it's needed in forming the shape of the fuselage, not necessarily for the strength. So that was quite an interesting discovery, and I've marked on here where it needs to come off as well. So I'm going to start shaping now. I did have a little bit of a play with the shaping at the back, and I've just been sanding this in a bit of an idle moment, and these stringers here I've actually thinned down the edge of these, so they're still quite strong because they've still got full thickness, but I've actually thinned them down just on the edge there with about a 45-degree angle. And you can see now those look a lot more scale and a lot more delicate, hopefully, than on that side where you've still got the full thickness for the whole stringer. And I've still got that side to do, but you can see that just looks so much nicer, and when it's covered it'll look, that finer detail will be appreciated, I think. Anyway, I'm going to start profiling this now. I think I'm going to get the side elevation done first, and then I will probably move on and do the plan view and bring this in. But we'll keep coming back and having a look and seeing how the progress goes. I've now shaped the sides, so the plan view, and I've brought those down to meet the nose ring on either side, and I've also shaped the side elevation, not the top, sorry, the bottom edge here anyway, and I've brought that, and again that's just touching the nose ring. So now I'm touching the nose ring on these three sides, and that is more or less the finished profile for those views, and I need to think about taking the corners down now to produce that nice round bullet shape. One of the things I found really useful as I'm doing this is to keep looking at it with my little set square, and just to check that I'm not taking the sides down, but actually I'm getting a bit of a bump in the middle. So I'm just constantly just checking that and running that along just to make sure it's consistent. And what I'm going to do now, because I'm concerned, as I'm getting towards a sort of a finished, or working towards the finished fuselage shape, I don't want to scratch this on bits of glue that are stuck on my cutting mat or bits of balsa. So I'm just sitting it on this towel, which I can shake out every so often, because with the best will in the world, as you're sanding and planing, it's going to be sliding on this mat, and a towel actually just gives you a little bit of grip as well. So that's better. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on these bottom corners, because I've got the shape around the ring to work to, but I've also got that shape that I drew on there earlier. So that's going to be the next job, and then we'll have a look at that, and then the next job will be to do the top, which will probably be the hardest job, I think. Well, I've now done the underside of the nose just fairly roughly. It's still, I can see here, there's still a little bit of a slight ridge, and it'll just need finishing once I've done the overall basic shape to get it just right and smoothed off. But it comes down nicely, a nice angle, and comes right in to meet that nose ring all the way around now on this underside, which is quite nice. It's hugely rewarding. Balsa is such a lovely material to work with. I really enjoy it. I mean, this didn't take long to do, just these bottom corners, 10-15 minutes. It's quite a nice, easy material to work with. The next thing I've got to do now is to turn it over and do the same on the upper side. As with the underside, I've got obviously I'll bring it down to meet the ring here, and I've got this inner line here, which hopefully the camera will pick up, which I'm going to work to, and then it gradually kind of fades out as it gets further towards the cockpit and the turtle deck. Not sure how that's going to pan out. I think that'll have to be a little bit of suck it and see, and I'll aim to do this bit first, and I think that will just naturally feed and drift out. But we'll come back and have a look at that in a minute. Well, I think we've gone from what was potentially a balsa brick to something that's looking more like a sleek Avanti, and I'm really pleased with how this shaping has gone on the top. It's a lot more curved here at the front, and then it kind of peters out at the back, and I'm really pleased I had these gauges, because that really helped. And I probably wouldn't have taken as much balsa off this nose if I hadn't had these. I'd have probably been a bit more conservative. Where the canopy goes, I've kind of petered the curve out and left a little bit of vertical on the side here, just so the canopy can attach onto that nicely, just here, and then the curve, more or less where the canopy finishes, the curve starts to bite in there and really go over, which I think is quite a good look. Regarding the nose, I wasn't sure, and the engine bay, I wasn't sure how this would look. I couldn't envisage how it was going to work out totally until I actually started doing it, and then it seemed to come together. You can see I've put the triangular stock in here to hold that nose ring, but also to fill this gap, and that sort of curves around, and I've shaved a little bit off these side pieces just to try and make that a little bit more uniform as it comes along. And I've just curved this up. There's still some work to go here, a little bit, just in some final finishing. And I still need to finish doing the fuel proofing. Even though I have fuel proofed it, obviously with the work I've done and this triangular stock, it'll need redoing. I've had the engine in, it fits. The high-speed needle is lovely and accessible. It's probably, well, it's high enough above the side anyway, plenty of room. The throttle linkage on the carb just catches on full throttle on the front here. I may bend or modify the carb linkage. I'm not sure. I need to think about that. I don't want to rush into that. I could cut this out here, but I'll probably have to cut out quite a chunk maybe, and I don't really want to weaken that. So I'll have a think about that. But the engine fits in lovely, so I'm really, really pleased about that. I was a little bit worried because it's quite tight. And if we have a look at the turtle deck, we can see I've sanded these sides here and just brought those up to meet the turtle deck, and the stringers, I've thinned them out, and they like I said earlier, they just look a little bit more scale like that. I've noticed I've got a little bit more just to do there, just to make sure that's right. But I think essentially now, besides the final finishing, we've before covering, we've got this fuselage in a place where it actually starts to look like an Avanti.